Hello and welcome to Caffeine Entertainment. I'm your host Mental 9R, and in today's hot take video, yes it is another hot take, we are going to be talking about video games and whether or not they can improve your cognitive skills. And I'll be doing that as always with my good buddy and co-host Finn Tin. How you doing, Finn?
Huh?
Those cognitive abilities are off the charts, buddy.
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. A bit earlier today, so the lighting is a bit different. It looks the same for
Yeah,
you, but I got a bit
yeah,
more
I've kind of
sunshine in here.
got my window blocked because it comes in and the light kind of just hits the screen. I don't like that. So,
Mm.
especially in the winter now, in the afternoons, you'll have the sunlight down low on the angle because I'm up in the northern part of the world, and it comes straight through the window and hits my monitor directly, and it drives me crazy. So, yeah. Well, let's bring up this article.
Yeah,
Let's
it's an
see
interesting one.
what they
Not
say.
not maybe not super surprising. I guess back in the day, video games were much maligned, and I think they talk about the article about essentially a breakdown of societal norms, and everyone's going to go around rampaging and murdering grandmothers or whatever it was. There was big campaigns in, I remember in Ireland anyway, or in Europe, like people were campaigning against violent video games, which and obviously there were some events in the US as well that led people to think that there is a link there. But it does make sense to me, at least anyway, that any type of activity which is going to have to make you think and react to things quickly is going to be helpful in some ways. And I would imagine for people getting older, like you, that anything that you can do to keep, yeah, to keep anything you can do to keep your brain elastic, so to speak, but and adaptable. Because the other thing as well, you know even yourself in new games. What I noticed anyway, that when you pick up a new game with different types of controls, it doesn't feel right to you, and then after a while, it feels very fluid, and you don't even think about it anymore. That means your
Yeah.
brain is learning stuff, right? It is, and you may say like it's not learning useful stuff, but I think all learning is good, right? Like that, all learning is helping your brain remain adaptable, which is something you definitely lose as you age, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, when I play on PC, I remap all the keys. And I do that in part because I want the controls to be as similar as possible. It's one of the things I like about playing on PC is that regardless of how the dev sets up the controls and what they think is best, I can customize it to what my muscle memory is already familiar with. So, my shift key is always crouch in every game I play. If there's no crouch, then I either just won't use the shift key for anything or I'll apply something that's, similar in the game or whatever. It might be a dodge effect or something like that, right? But, my primary weapon is always the letter T. Secondary is always W. Third's always A. Those are things that I do in every single game I play, assuming there are, things and choices like that. And
Maybe that's
kind of
something you shouldn't do.
yeah, well, I mean, of course, I do play on console too. And on console, you don't have that same flexibility. So you're forced to do things like, using a recent example from our backlogs and replays. If you haven't watched it, it's a great thing to do. Lots of good games in there. The Going from playing the Callisto Protocol to Dead Space, similar mechanics, the stomp mechanic, different button you had to hit to do it, right? You did that thing differently, and I find stuff like that. It took a little while. I found myself hitting the Y button or the triangle triangle on PlayStation to do the stomp because that's what I had been doing in Callisto Protocol, and it wasn't doing it right in Dead Space. So it took a second to kind of retrain your brain. Yeah, this is a different game, and you do it differently.
So
I don't
funny
know if you had
story.
that same experience, but
No, I didn't actually. I didn't even notice, to be honest. But I do. 2 points, I guess. First of all, I played Callisto Protocol on Xbox, and I played Dead Space on PlayStation. So
Oh,
potentially the button mapping was a little bit different. But you just reminded me on Callisto Protocol, and I don't know exactly how I did it. I was going into the options for something, and I think I inadvertently changed the controls from standard or default to custom A or something or alternative or whatever. And for a while
okay.
afterwards, I was like, "Geez, the stomp isn't working anymore." And I was hitting this button, and it was doing something else. And then I said, "Oh no, it's R2 is the stomp." I said, "Geez." Or R1 was the stomp or something. And I was like, geez, I thought it was a different button. So I kept on using it for a while. And I was like, no, 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 this doesn't feel. And I had played it for a while now, like a couple of hours. I say, it still doesn't feel right. And I had to go back to the controls, and I saw I had changed it. But my brain adapted to it fairly quickly. What is also interesting, though, in this article, and also not surprising to you and me, is that the scientist is pointing out, hey, you have to do exercise and video gaming too, because
What?
these things don't. He said like exercise is good for the brain and helps reduce stress, etc., and keeps you fit and healthy, and your cognitive abilities are increased by playing video games. However, those two things do not translate. I.e., you can't just play more video games and get the benefits of exercise. So that's a bit of a downer that he discovered that as well. It would have been,
Is he sure? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. That doesn't
Otherwise, I
sound
would have
right.
been ready to point this out to my other half and say, "Hey, when you were encouraging me to do those push-ups, not required, not required. I just have to hit those buttons harder." But yeah, that's a
Yeah.
bit unfortunate, but not too surprising. And I do think that more and more now, not that I'm not a doctor, but I do think more and more now they are finding that you do have to do activities to keep your cognitive ability sharp. You do have to exercise so that you don't, so that the last half of your life or the second half of your life is as good as it possibly can be. And I think the same is true in both regards. I actually would be. There was another interesting point as well they mentioned later on, which is that don't bother signing up for these tools or whatever websites that are apparently help you get smarter. You're just as well off playing video games, which is good news for us, right? So
There you go.
yeah, but I do think it's important as you enter in the autumn years, as they say, that you be more. Oh yeah, what I was going to say is that I think particularly as you get older, and obviously when you get into your 70s and later, you have to be worried about things like dementia and all that. And the more adaptable I think your brain is, the more flexible the fibers in your brain are. I think the better you would be able to offset aging diseases like that. Again, I'm not a
Yeah.
doctor, but it makes sense to me at least anyway.
Yeah. It makes me think of there's a game or a couple of series of games you could get for the old Nintendo DS Lite that I have somewhere. It's actually probably pretty close by here someplace. But and it was called Brain Age. And it
Hmm.
was just basically solving puzzles and doing stuff to maintain that flexibility, as you say. And, games like Sudoku and stuff like that that makes you problem solve and think through problems and stuff, much like you do in video games.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I
it's
think a lot of video games, even when you look at something like Dead Space, not a not a puzzle game by any manner or means, but there are puzzles
yeah,
you need to figure out, right? There are when you think about the hunter, for example, that's a puzzle. Like, how do you kill this guy who seems impervious to harm? And then you have to
yeah,
try to figure out. Well, there's a Cairo chamber there, and you have to get him in there, and you have to pause him long enough so you can get into the room and hit the button. Like that's problem solving, right?
yeah, yeah. Otherwise, you're running around in circles and he's chasing you, and you run out of ammo trying to shoot him. And yeah, exactly.
And
You got to figure out how to
I,
dispose of him.
I've played video games with other people who haven't, or in front of other people who haven't played video games, and I could pick up something. I remember specifically, I think it was Crash Bandicoot, and they were like, "Well, how did you know that I hadn't played Crash Bandicoot before, but I knew the barrels were going to be good things, and I knew those red shiny things are going to be bad things. They're like, how do you know? And you just know, right? You're even
Yeah.
though you're not familiar with it, your brain is problem solving. It's taking patterns that you've seen before and transposing them onto what you're seeing now, and then figuring out what you should do. So yeah,
Yeah.
I was very happy to read this article anyway. It gives me it gives me
Some
an excuse.
ammunition.
Gives me an excuse.
Yeah, well, and it'll be good news for a lot of the younger generation out there now. They can go, see mom, see dad, look at this. It improves cognitive skills. Now, I have heard that this may not be the best for kids with ADHD playing a lot of video games because of the dopamine hit that they get from it. It become highly addictive, but
Yeah.
in moderation, I think it's still a good thing. So, just a cautionary thing for people out there that might be watching this with kids with ADHD, which seems to be more common these days. Don't just let them play video games 8 hours a day all weekend. But yeah, cool. I don't know if I've got anything else to say other than I think this mentioned it was a Canadian research, so go Canada. Way to go.
Yeah.
Good stuff there, but anyway, it's a Western research, so I guess this doesn't apply in Europe or anywhere else, or anywhere
No.
like east of the West.
Yeah. If you play video games in China, you get dumber.
Yes, yes, it's this only applies in the Western world. So anyway, all right. Well, my friend, why don't you tell them where you can be found?
You can get me a Fintintin with one instead of the first I on X, and Fintintin on PlayStation, Steam, and Xbox.
And I am at Mental9R on X. I am Mental9R on PlayStation, Xbox, Steam, and just about anywhere else you can play video games. And this, of course, is Caffeine Entertainment on YouTube and Rumble. If you've watched the video and you enjoyed this kind of content, please don't be afraid to hit that like and subscribe button. And maybe even more importantly, leave your thoughts in our comments below. Thanks for joining us. Once again, I am Mental9R. He is Fin Tin Tin. This is Caffeine Entertainment. Don't forget, it's time to wake up and play some games.